And we're live, I think. As I am bored, anxious, tired, and mostly bored, I thought I would... Oh dear. I'm a genius, I think. Yeah, we are live. Fantastic. I also had it playing in the background. Genius. Anyway, today we're going to be doing a response to Prime Minister's questions like we have for the last 2 weeks. To get us off the subject of Windrush, we're going back to Brexit. Because there have been some interesting revelations, I guess. And Corbyn, well, I thought he did badly in this. I watched it about 4, maybe 5 times to be sure. Echo Genius, yes. I can see live chat, yes. And I thought when I was watching it that he did poorly, but then some of the tweets I saw about an hour ago indicated that May lost 6-0. And I thought, are they right or wrong? And to an extent they're right. She didn't do very well. But they're also wrong in that he didn't do much better. If we're going to pick winners for rounds, I don't think he won any of them either. Which I guess is unsurprising. She didn't do that well at all. I think for some of them she didn't even answer the questions. So hello to Count Dibula, Colobrinus, oh whatever, I can't pronounce your name. And Sir Blue-Footed Booby. It's good to see you all. So let's dive right into this, shall we? Oh, and this week, this is the Deputy Speaker. Hello, Any Jake, and Just Do It. Hello. This is the Deputy Speaker of the House, whose name I can't remember, but he sounds like a common, filthy farmer fuck. And so he's taking the place of the Speaker because the Speaker's at the funeral of the former Speaker of the House, and not because the Speaker's been fired yet or made to resign, because I think that might happen within the next 12 months. So yeah. Let's just let's get into this. I'm going to play the bump because the first question is of interest.
Number 1, Drew Hendry.
Yeah. Question number 1, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As I said last week, the condolences of the whole House are with the family and friends of Michael Martin. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Drew Hendry.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Many
hello, Stargazer.
Highland businesses rely on EU national employees simply to operate.
Yep.
Given that her government already makes a charge of up to £1,000 per year per person for non-EU nationals, will she categorically rule out any such immigration skills charge for EU nationals after the UK leaves the EU?
Okay, right, so for this I need to go to find a source. Where is it? Is it this one? Here we go. On the BBC website there was a article from the 11th of January last year where ministers hint at a £1,000 fee for EU workers. The article basically reads that companies can be charged to hire skilled workers from the European Union after Brexit, the immigration minister had suggested. So this is already something that had been put on the table. This is because obviously we do charge that for recruiting workers outside the EU. Basically the whole concept is to penalise it, I guess. I don't really see the point of charging people to come here and work, but why wouldn't we want to tax them? I mean, it's something we love to do, don't we? If you're English, you'll get this. Everything you own, everything you do, everything you achieve has been taxed in some way. It's unsurprising that we'd want to make money from people coming here to work, even though I wouldn't think for a second just because you're a skilled worker you'd want to pay up to £1,000 a year for the privilege of working here. I think that's a cop-out. Now Downing Street did say when he said this that his remarks have been misinterpreted and the levy was not on the government's agenda. So the government has claimed to have made their position clear. The government's decision has said the decision to leave the EU will give the UK greater control over its borders, but British firms are concerned about their capacity to fill vacancies. We do have a large number of jobs right now that are vacant, because a lot of jobs were being filled by EU nationals. But even with those unemployed right now, we do have the potential to fill them with skilled workers if we give or invest into those people to then take up those jobs. Yeah, taxes are overdone. No one cares about the Highlands, you Scotch spacker. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. So yeah, it's something that had already been suggested. Government had already nixed it.
Prime Minister.
We recognise that after the United Kingdom leaves the European Union, there will still be those from the EU who wish to come and work and study here in the UK. There'll still be...
And I still hope they do. I hope they manage to come up with an agreement where people who want to come learn and study or work here, if they're skilled, can.
UK citizens who wish to work and study in the European Union, and we'll bring forward our proposals for those arrangements in due course.
Ray Caulfield.
Okay, so when this question gets asked, you're going to hear a lot of cheering and jeering. In a moment, you're going to understand why it really shouldn't be cheering.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Does the Prime Minister think that it was the Labour Party voting against 69,000 first-time buyers with the abolition of stamp duty, or the Labour Party voting against 50,000 extra school children getting free school meal, that convinced local voters in elections last year to vote Conservative as the only party on their side? And that's why the Conservatives retain control of Westminster and Wandsworth Council, and it's why they gain control in places like Redditch, Basildon and Barnet.
Right, now before the Prime Minister answers this, nice. Hello, Adam. The Conservative Party lost a lot of seats, so there is no real cause for celebration. Yes, you won a few, and you retained some key areas. However, Labour did win quite a bit. Maybe not as much as they could have, or could have, and certainly a number of people have put forward the argument that it was entirely because of the anti-Semitism not being tackled. But that's still no reason for Theresa May to celebrate even slightly. I do find it fascinating, though, that Labour did vote against an incentive or something that would give up to however many thousands of young children free school lunches. Not surprised about the stamp duty, because that's you know, that's kind of one of those things Labour loves to do, and that's penalise people for wanting to own their house. Yeah, or buy a house. Yeah. They talk about wanting to help everyone get on the ladder, but all the while push for that. What a dick move. By the way, just to make it clear, because somebody recently in a comment on one of my YouTube videos indicated that I was a conservative channel. I don't know if I qualify as conservative, but I know that sometimes things I've said do certainly come across as conservative. I don't know if I am or not, though, because I've never really thought about it. I've always just preferred the position of, fuck it. This issue is right, this issue is wrong, not right-leaning or correct. Anyway.
Order. Can I just say, it's not the Prime Minister's responsibility for the Labour Party, but I'm sure she'll be able to get an answer for the Prime Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, but I can say to my honourable friend that...
What a great job he did white knighting like that.
She is right about votes that took place in this House, where the Labour Party did vote, the opposition did vote, against the abolition of stamp duty.
I don't know where I stand on this. Oh, no, I do. I don't actually think it should exist. I think if people want to buy a home, and they're being made to pay if it's over a certain amount, that's quite cruel. I think that's unfair. People aspire to want to own a home, but apparently you can only own a home without having to pay it if it's under a certain limit. That's a bit of a dick move, really. I wonder who introduced stamp duty.
for those young first-time buyers, which is proving so helpful. But last Thursday, what we saw when millions of people across England went to the polls to vote for their local councils was that the real winners were ordinary people, because more people are now able to get the benefit of Conservative councillors who keep their council tax low and provide good local services.
There was a street, and I don't remember if this was mentioned in PMQs last week, and it was certainly amusing when I heard it, where on one side it falls within a Labour district and the council tax is like 1,400, and on the other side of the street is a Conservative council, because it divides right down the middle, and they pay half the amount. It's quite astonishing, really. Whether or not that's truly beneficial or indicative of any kind of trend, I'm not going to speak on that. Labour do have a track record of overspending, so they have to overcompensate. Conservatives now have a track record of being thrifty. Hello to Zerzofiel. Yes. Hope you're well. And Socky.
Jeremy Corbyn,
And Socky, no, I have not mentioned her yet.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Before he even says his first question or whatever, he will, on a number of occasions, address the Deputy Speaker as the Speaker and Deputy Speaker. But that's okay. The Deputy Speaker is not innocent in this either, because at one point I think he calls Jeremy Corbyn the Prime Minister.
First of all, Mr. Deputy Speaker, could I put on record my thanks to Mr. Speaker for attending the funeral of the late Michael Martin on behalf of this House this morning in Glasgow. Does the Prime Minister agree with her Foreign Secretary that the plan for a customs partnership set out in her Lancaster House speech is in fact crazy?
I think most people agree that the two ideas put forward in her speech were absolutely ludicrous, and I will go and pull them up. Okay, so the government's two customs options. First one, a, quote, highly streamlined customs arrangement. This would minimise customs checks rather than getting rid of them altogether by using new technologies and things like trusted trader schemes, which could allow companies to pay duties in bulk every few months rather than every time their goods cross a border. And the second one, a customs partnership. This would remove the need for new customs checks at the border. The UK would collect tariffs set by the EU Customs Union on goods coming into the UK on behalf of the EU. If those goods didn't leave the UK and UK tariffs on them were lower, companies would then claim back the difference. Many have argued that this is basically like us staying in the EU altogether. And I certainly understand this argument to the point where I think it might have some validity to it. Now the opposition from Brexiteers, they've repeatedly, I'm quoting from the BBC article now, Mrs May has been repeatedly urged by Brexiteers to abandon the partnership option, which basically means to keep the UK tied to EU rules. A cabinet source has said it would be unimaginable for the Prime Minister to press on with the hybrid model after it has been torn apart by members of her own Brexit committee. With Jacob Rees-Mogg saying on ITV's Peston on Sunday, he labelled it cretinous, and dismissed the warning about impact on jobs. Now, the impact on jobs argument has been used and kind of exhausted. It was used by Remainers continuously throughout the campaign, to the point where it was like, oh, we're going to lose our jobs, everyone's going to lose their jobs, we're going to be bankrupt, but we're fine. Can you the unions, I think it's called the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, and the TUC, the trade unions, shut up. You used scaremongery during the campaign to begin with, the Brexit campaign, and you're still using it now as a way to try and keep us tied to the very things we are meant to leave. It is getting embarrassing now. Right, I've said that. Let us press on. Oh, by the way, I love that they panned to a picture of Boris. Something about Boris always makes me chuckle. That meant out, out, out. You don't want your rules put on. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, we are leaving the European Union. We are leaving.
Yep, we are, and hopefully the customs union too, even if your ideas are ridiculous. Although, I will argue, unlike the leader of the opposition, he hasn't put forward any ideas. And I think that's key here. Okay, he's opposition and he doesn't have to. However, she's putting forward ideas and they are being debated, which I think is key here. They've been tested, they do not work. Back to the drawing board. At least ideas are being created, conjured.
We are leaving the customs union, but of course, for our future trade arrangements, a trade relationship with the European Union, we will need to agree customs arrangements, which will ensure that we leave the customs union, that we can have an independent free trade policy, that we can maintain no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, and that we have as frictionless trade with the European Union as possible.
The chantering is quite irritating, isn't it?
And I'll tell the right honourable gentleman what's crazy. What's crazy is a leader of the opposition who for years opposed TTIP and now has a policy that would mean Labour signing up to TTIP with no say in it whatsoever.
Right. Firstly, to Dibula, Boris looks like Jeff Daniels from Dumb and Dumber. He does. I think it wasn't that long ago he was actually being compared to Donald Trump on appearance, which I thought was quite amusing, but I get it. I think it's the hair. Although if Trump had that haircut, I think he'd look amazing. Not sure he has the hair for it, but still. One side, they're stealing our jobs. The other side, we'll lose our jobs. Yes. And one side is lying. Now, for those who didn't hear that, when Teresa was speaking, she mentions TTIP. TTIP is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which is a series of trade negotiations being carried out mostly in secret between the EU and the US. As a bilateral trade agreement, TTIP is about reducing the regulatory barriers to trade for big businesses, things like food safety law, environmental legislation, banking regulations, and the sovereign powers of individual nations. And as the executive director of a campaign group War on Want said, it is an assault on European and US societies by transnational corporations. There is a fantastic image that goes with an article talking about this, where it says T-tipping, not democracy. It's nice to know some people prefer this negotiation trade deal instead of democracy, because they didn't get the result they wanted under democracy. So what they really want is big business to own their ass. Since before TTIP negotiations began last February, the process has been secretive and undemocratic. You mean like a certain aspect of the EU that we voted to leave? It's very interesting here that there are people who voted Brexit, and this bugs me to a degree. We voted Brexit because of immigration, because of employment, other issues as well, money putting in and getting out kind of thing, but also because of rooms and committees and departments not being elected. And I think that's key here, because in the UK, if you are someone that voted Brexit but you support the House of Lords, you're a hypocrite. And I support the idea of the House of Lords. I do not support them being unelected. If they're elected, I can agree with it to an extent. They have to be accountable, but they themselves also have to be accountable to people that voted for them. I think that's key. Oh my god. If anyone can do a little gif of Corbyn's head in the music video of Getting Jiggy With It, that'd be great. I wouldn't use it on this stream. I'm not one of those, I can't stream with GIF reels. It just doesn't work for me. So there are 6 reasons that apparently we should be scared of TTIP. The first one is the NHS. One of the main aims of TTIP is to open up Europe's public health, education and water services to US companies. This would essentially mean privatizing the NHS. Second is food, environmental safety. TTIP's regulatory convergence agenda will seek to bring EU standards on food and safety and the environment closer to those of the US, where the US's are much less strict to our own. The third is banking regulations. TTIP cuts both ways. The UK, under the influence of all-powerful City of London, is thought to be seeking a loosening of US banking regulations, which I wouldn't recommend. Look what happened last time your banking regulations weren't as strict. 4 is privacy. So in the European Parliament, the anti-counterfeiting trade agreement was thrown out after a huge public backlash against what was rightly seen as an attack on individual privacy. TTIP is thought to be bringing back ACTA's central elements, proving that if the democratic approach doesn't work, there's always the back door. The 5th one is jobs. The EU has already admitted that TTIP will probably cause unemployment as jobs switch to the US, where labour standards and trade union rights are lower. And the 6th is democracy, but then as we've already know, democracy is not exactly it's not exactly something synonymous with the EU. So yeah, that's TTIP. I hope that helps. And the fact that he supports something like this is ridiculous. But then again, at the same time, it doesn't surprise me because it is so socialist. Also, one little thing. A lot of accusations on Twitter for this said that Theresa May didn't answer a single question. I think she did answer this one, but not as well as she could have. Also, something you're going to notice, Corbyn doesn't bite back on a single thing she says. Any shots at him, he ignores it. Now, I don't know if that's a statesman-like thing, or if it's because it's not in his script and he is very, very prone to never straying from it. I know a lot of people accuse Theresa May before reading from a script, but if you notice, her eyes didn't really look down much. And they don't throughout this. Whether she's rehearsed her script, I don't know. But I think for the sake of it, it's very disingenuous to say that she was reading from a script when all he does is read from a script. Hello, Laura. And hello, Jesse.
Jeremy Corbyn! Mr. Speaker, could the Prime Minister explain why she and her cabinet wasted weeks working up proposals that the EU said was unworkable, the Foreign Secretary described as crazy, and does she agree with her business secretary, who...
Just a thing. At least, and I've said it again, I'm going to say it again, sorry. At least she is coming up with solutions. We are soon going to come to your solution and realise that not only did you not provide one, but what you actually do is nothing. I know you're opposition, but this is a joke.
Apparently backs the crazy customs partnership proposal, but made it clear he doesn't back a technological alternative when he told the BBC that jobs would be at risk if we don't sort out a comprehensive customs deal.
Yeah, this is a quote out of context.
What the business secretary said on Sunday.
At the perfectly faded delusions. Did they really? How did that go? Also, what kind of Labour Party do you have in your area? I am very keen to know this.
Monday was that it was absolutely right that we should be
Hotel feature.
leaving the customs union. And if the right honourable gentleman wants to talk about jobs, I'm happy to talk about jobs. Half a million jobs lost under the last Labour government. Record employment rate under this Conservative government.
Notice she didn't really answer the question, but we do now get to talk about employment, where something quite interesting cropped up when I looked at the unemployment numbers. So, under Labour, which ended in 2010, the percentage of unemployed was 7.9%. Current percentage of unemployed in this country is 4.2%. It hasn't been that low since, I believe, I have to find it, where is it? 4.1% in 1975. It hasn't been that low since then. Nope, no number nearer. 4.8% in 2004, but not 4.2%. The nearest is 1975. Now, of course, this could be affected by seasonal work. It could be affected by zero-hour contract if any exists still. However, oh, Laura's walking home from work. Are you sure you're safe at home? Safe walking down dark alleys at night, Laura? Watched. Oh God! Don't let Sir Zophiel try. She kicked the shit out of you, mate. Anyway, let's let Corbyn continue. But just for the sake of it, she didn't really answer this question.
Jeremy Corbyn! Mr. Speaker, the government says it has two options. The Foreign Secretary says one is crazy.
They've put up two options. Both have been discussed, debated, and essentially destroyed.
Sir Ivan Rogers, our former EU ambassador, said that the technological alternative is a fantasy island unicorn model.
I think that's a fantastic idea model. Unicorns? That's all I heard when he spoke. I know people are laughing in the back, except for Tom Watson, who you guys can't see, but he's on the right side of Jeremy Corbyn, so he's left. He's not smiling at all, but I think the idea is fantastic, hilarious. And hello, Carlos. Anyway,
they have two options, neither of which are workable. The case for a new customs union with the European Union is clear: to support jobs and living standards. Why is the Prime Minister ignoring all the major business organisations, all the major trade unions in backing a customs union? Isn't it time she stood up to those described last night by the father of the House as these wild right-wing people?
Prime Minister!
We are leaving.
I honestly, wild right-wing people it almost sounds like a pejorative, doesn't it? I wouldn't say that they're wild right-wing. It's more that he disagrees with their position. And he's not a salty man, the father of the house, but he is a bit of a dick when it comes to addressing Brexit. Also, another thing that's going to be interesting, it's going to come up real soon, is the Labour Party's position on Brexit, which means we're going to be addressing their manifesto in a minute, which I think is going to be rather amusing.
The customs union. What we are doing is...
Before the Prime Minister answers, doesn't really answer at all. Blue-footed booby, does PMQs really achieve anything? Yes. It entertains me. It shows me... actually, if anything, there's a great level of confidence building. A lot of people rail on things like internet blood sports. But this is OG blood sports. This is OG, okay? It's been going on for hundreds of years. It's organised, and it's really funny to watch these people act like children, which makes me feel like when they address us as the ordinary people, like we are actually the elite class, because they themselves are so childish.
Is ensuring that we deliver customs arrangements that leave the customs union, that ensure no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, as frictionless trade with the EU as possible, and an independent trade policy. But what would Labour give us? They want to go into a customs union with the European Union, with no say over trade policy, with Brussels negotiating trade deals in their interest, not our own. The Labour manifesto said they wanted to strike trade deals. Now they've gone back on that policy. Typical Labour, letting Britain down once again.
Okay, so now we get to address the Labour manifesto, because this didn't take long. I referenced it in a video, and so pulling it up wasn't hard. But there's a lot of it. There was a section for international trade. So Labour is pro-trade and pro-investment, although their version of pro-investment is just throwing money at it, and like a drug, if it sticks, that's the right dosage. The UK's future prosperity depends on minimising tariffs and non-tariff barriers that prevent us from exporting and creating the jobs and economic growth we need. A Labour government will work with devolved administrations to bring forward an integrated trade and industrial strategy that boosts exports, investment and decent jobs in Britain. So, there are 4 short paragraphs. I'm going to read these because they are relevant. Labour will set out our priorities in an international trade white paper, never saw that, to lead a national debate on the future of Britain's trade policy. We will ensure proper transparency and parliamentary scrutiny of all future trade and investment deals. I'm okay with that, even though we never saw the white paper. The EU accounts for 44% of our current exports and will continue to be a priority trading partner. As our trading relationship with the EU changes, it is vital that we retain unrestricted access for our goods and services. So, stay in the customs union then, basically. Through our Just Trading initiative launched in 2016, Labour will work with global trading partners to develop best-in-class free trade and investment agreements that remove trade barriers and promote skilled jobs and high standards. We will ensure all future trade deals safeguard the right to regulate in the public interest and to protect public services. Labour is committed to the rules-based international trading system of the World Trade Organization. We will rejoin the government procurement agreement, whilst safeguarding the capacity for public bodies to make procurement decisions in keeping with public policy objectives. How very vague of it. Now there was more about... There's a lot more, in fact, about the World Trade Organization, but it's all quite vague, and there's no real mention of Brexit, even though this is international trade that was under negotiating Brexit. So I think that's quite silly, because you've got negotiating Brexit in the manifesto as a subject, and it's got... this is a good bit. Labour accepts the referendum result and a Labour government will put the national interest first. That means not respecting the vote, because apparently 16.4 million people mean more to this country than 17.4 million people who voted against the 16.4 million people. So the quote from this bit here on negotiating Brexit: Labour will always put jobs and the economy first. So not the people then. You know, the people that voted to leave the EU, which means everything. It's quite sad that Labour's position is to basically stay a part of the customs union, which they finally agreed to recently. And their manifesto pretty much just cements that belief. They should send the Lords to a Swiss clinic. I think a 104-year-old scientist just went to one because he felt he'd lived too long. It's a shame. No offense. It brings up a rather interesting discussion about euthanasia. Maybe for another time, though.
Jeremy Corbyn! Mr. Speaker, she presides over a divided cabinet.
LOL. Leg to stand on, you have none. First of all, you sacked somebody just because they spoke against your line. Okay? And the very same thing that Diane Abbott did, which was to basically repeat what he said, the guy you fired, you did nothing. Because, you know, we got to protect black women. Although I'm not convinced that she is, in fact, women. Fact is, I actually don't mind a divided cabinet. I think it's great because it keeps the person in charge on their toes. Especially when you are doing an inadequate job as opposition. Granted, you've actually asked some interesting questions that you haven't actually got answers to. And I think this will be the third one. However, you are not good enough as opposition. There's no denying that. Whether you want to be statesman-like or not, which I think is, I guess there's some irony to it when you're the guy who is most anti-state, I guess. Anti-establishment. Anyway, Laura, I'd happily have a convo over euthanasia. See, it's an interesting subject, isn't it? It brings up a lot of moral arguments. And my head is swimming with ideas right now, but I'm not going to do it now. Maybe another time. Maybe on your channel, Laura.
She's had 23 months. She has had...
Ooh, one must point at the divided cabinet. So, the only reason we can't see yours as divided is because you sack almost anyone that contradicts you. Because you're a bitch-made fuck.
23 months in order to negotiate an agreement and hasn't made any progress on it. The CBI says a comprehensive customs union after...
Just before we get into that, Laura, discussing the death penalty with a Swede. My very first stream I ever did, and this is a history lesson for everyone. I was on Sandre's stream. He invited the Justicar on. And me. I had 34 subscribers at the time on my main channel. And he and Justicar argued for nearly an hour about the death penalty. It was hilarious. Because he, as a Swede, could never perceive how it could be that somebody could have the right to have their life taken away from them.
Transition is a practical, real-world answer. The TUC, on behalf of 6 million workers in this country, put it simply, ruling out a customs union risks jobs.
Yeah, right.
The government continues to reject a new customs union, but at the weekend the business secretary made clear that neither of their options would be ready to be implemented by December 2020. So can the Prime Minister tell us what is...
Our transition period, I believe, extends into 2021, I think. Or close to it. But I do agree that if it can't be implemented in time, then, yeah, something needs to be done to change it.
Her preferred option, and on what date it will be ready to be implemented.
Minister!
This is an interesting one because the debating thing I'd like to hear about. I'd like to hear those. And I'd like to know when this could be implemented. So actually, this is a good question.
The honourable gentleman talks about the length of time in the negotiations. Of course, it wasn't until March and the agreement to move on to the next stage of negotiations that it was possible to have discussions with the European Commission on the customs arrangements.
I do think that's a key point. We can't just move from one thing to another. These things have to be done in order. And if we're unable to get past a particular stop, then there's no point continuing discussion until we've gotten over that hill, that obstacle. Yes, negotiations, I get the feeling, have been going a bit slow, which I think is why a transition period had been agreed upon. And it does suck that things haven't been more expedient. However, I think I would very much like to know when these things could be implemented. I do actually want to know this.
There are two options. There are two options that were in my Mansion House speech. Questions have been raised about both of those options, and further work continues. But I just say, if I may say this to the right honourable gentleman, he has spent an entire career opposing a customs union. Now, when the British...
Just again to change subject. Isn't it weird somebody who takes their name from Sith, wields a lightsaber, isn't in favour of the death penalty? Interesting. Continuing.
People want to come out, he wants to stay in. I know he's leader of the opposition, but that's going a bit far.
A lot of these arguments have been cheap shots, but also, as a lot of you hopefully noticed, the answers aren't truly being given. And I think that makes it quite difficult to sort of side with May on this. But also because she's fucking useless. I think... Okay. I think in a minute we're about to get to the one where she actually genuinely won't answer the question. It bugs me the most. Let's go with that.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, due to divisions within the government, these negotiations are in a shambles. Yeah. And this House is being denied the opportunity to debate crucial legislation affecting the future of our economy and communities all over Britain.
That's right.
Okay, so this is interesting because the things he's about to mention, these particular debates, I'm not sure if I'm in favour or not. I think the end result, yes, they should be debated and voted upon in Parliament. But I know Parliament enough to know right now that it's so fractured, it's so divided, and most want to remain in the EU that I don't think even if a good deal was put forward that they'd vote in favour of it. It's unsurprising, but we'll see.
So can the Prime Minister now tell the House when we will debate the trade bill and when we will debate the customs bill? Yeah. She's had 23 months in order to get ready for it.
Yeah.
Minister!
Hello, Viper Sword. And I would like to know again when these would be debated in Parliament, if they are at all going to be debated in Parliament. I think, though, I think the reason they haven't been stems from the fact that we have yet to actually agree terms in trade. I think once we get to that position, it's a possibility it can then be arranged. Until then, we have to wait, and well, that sucks, really, doesn't it?
The Right Honourable Gentleman talks about the state of the negotiations. Before, the Right Honourable Gentleman talked about the state...
You hear the chuntering? You're going to hear a woman shout, "Answer him, answer him." Yeah, that pissed me off.
...of the negotiations. Before December, he was saying that the negotiations weren't going to get anywhere. What did we get? A joint report agreed by the European Council. He said before March we wouldn't get what we wanted in the negotiations. What did we get? An implementation and an agreement with the European Union Council. We're now in negotiation for the best deal for the UK when we leave the EU, and we will get the best deal for the UK when we leave the European Union.
She didn't answer the question, by the way. Which I think is a damning statement. She was right with what she said, actually, though, earlier parts, but they weren't the question. The question was about the debate. So I think that's unfortunate. Sucks. Actually, it's just poor showing by May. She's right about the joint report. Yeah, great. Fantastic. We're already, 18 months into this shit now. Over a year into this shit. Oh god, the conversation in the chats devolved into the death penalty. Dear oh dear. And yes, Dibula, the person who kept chuntering and gobbing off is a retard.
Prime Minister!
3 months we'd had a better answer than that from the Prime Minister. Mr. Deputy Speaker, how can they negotiate in the future interests of people's jobs and living standards when cabinet members are more interested in putting their own futures first?
Don't you think that's kind of ironic, considering your party pretty much does the same? Oh, I love the pause face I got there. Oh my god. It looks like he's gurning, or like he's developed a spastic child smile. Beautiful. Has Corbyn mentioned? No, he hasn't. He has not. So it's unfortunate. But I think, oh dear, what was I going to say? I can't remember. Yeah, so the Labour Party, it kind of is self-serving as well, being the fact they want to stay in the customs union, even though it goes against the very vote the people, made. Yeah. Anyway, that pause face. Look at that. Look at that. Spastic smile. Someone meme that for me, please, because it's very funny.
Fundamentally, Mr. Deputy Speaker, how can this government negotiate a good deal for Britain to defend people's jobs and living standards when they're unable to reach an agreement within themselves?
Okay, so I do want to hear the answer for that. How are they supposed to agree something when they can't stop fighting themselves? Which she won't answer because it's kind of a pathetic, wasted question. It's like a, here, yeah, take that, yeah. I kind of want to know how they're going to negotiate anything, but then your position is to just stay in the customs union and stay in the EU. So in the interest of the people, you go against it. You're supposedly for the many, not the few, but apparently your many are in fact the few. And the actual many are the few. Shit. That's confusing.
Prime Minister.
I'll tell this, the right honourable gentleman, what this government has been doing to defend jobs. A balanced approach to the economy, opposed by the Labour Party. Changes in legislation to more workers' rights, often opposed by the Labour Party. We have been ensuring that we see the jobs being created in this country. Employment rate at its highest rate since records began. What we are seeing in relation to the unemployment rate is at its lowest rate for 40 years or more.
Hang on a sec, let me just count this. 75, 85, 95, 105, 115, so 43 years.
This is a government that is putting jobs first at every stage of what...
Although it is an argument about the type of job.
What we are doing. And last week, what we saw up and down this country, whether in Barnet or Dudley or Peterborough, was the British people voting to reject the Back to the Future economic policy of the Labour Party and the broken promises of Labour. They don't trust Labour and they don't trust their leader.
Even though the Conservatives lost more seats than Labour. Yeah.
Jeremy Quinn! Thank you, sir. Under this government, the introduction of a total cost cap on payday lending has more than halved the number of people with problem payday loans that are unmanageable. Would my right honourable friend agree that now is the moment for the FCA to push this out and to extend that same successful policy to impact and confront doorstep lending?
Right. I'm not huge on those lending things, but I get why they exist. I'm glad that they're regulated better than they used to be, though, because holy shit, Wonga must have made bank on some of the fucking stunts they pulled. And hello, Miss Steam. You are late, though. You should be ashamed of yourself. The reason I'm keeping going, by the way, is because the SNP questions will come up soon, and they are a welcome change in subject, and they're going to make me chuckle just a little bit.
Prime Minister.
Can I say to my honourable friend, and I know he has been campaigning hard for the issues of financial inclusion, and that's very important, and he's working hard to promote that. And we are committed to ensuring that consumers are...
So Zophiel, wouldn't you say the turnback was a result of buyer's remorse? The seats lost? Quite possibly. Quite possibly.
Protected from unfair lending practices. I understand the FCA is currently conducting a review of the high-cost credit market, including doorstep lending, and will be publishing an update later this month. And of course, we've given the FCA new powers to cap the cost of credit, and they'll do so if they believe it's necessary to protect consumers.
In Blackford.
Before he asks his question, titled feature, I spent most of today arguing with SNP supporters, so this should be fun. Interestingly, though, even though the subject has been all about the customs union, the SNP don't ask about it. In fact, they ask about something from a position of ignorance, something which I think is actually really fucking stupid. Now, considering the role the man we're about to discuss is on, I mean, actually on a roll. Something historic is about to happen. He just got back something quite important, captured 5 very nasty individuals. This should all be quite, interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy
Jesus Christ, you're fat.
Speaker. We all woke up this morning to a much more dangerous world.
We had that in June of 2016. We had that in November of 2016 or December or whenever it was that Trump got elected. It's so dangerous. But what is it, Ian? What is it that has scared you so much? Why is the world so dangerous for your wee fat ass?
Donald Trump has undermined progress towards normalisation of relationships with Iran. Can they...
Okay. You know where this is going. And I will have a little ramble once we get there. But seriously, are you actually surprised Trump would start shit with a peon of a country
Prime Minister tell us, in her representations to the President on Saturday, did she speak in the strongest terms on the lunacy of the actions that the President of the United States is taking?
Okay, so Trump tore up the deal with Iran, a deal built off the back of a lie. That's the truth. If Iran now decided it wanted to then go and get its hands on some nuclear warheads, do you know what would happen? You see, Iran's not very popular in that area of the world. There are two countries, one of whom has hydrogen bombs, and the other has very easy access to it from Pakistan. That will quite happily blanket bomb that country to the point where there is nothing left. Not even a joke. They would be annihilated, so the only life left would be microbes. And they might even be challenged for existence. Although they might still have towels on their heads. Just saying. Who knows? Maybe microbes have culture too. Trump tore up a deal that didn't need to exist. It didn't need to exist because if Iran put a foot out of line, the inevitable will happen. Why the fuck does America have to have its finger in every pie on the fucking planet or be in everyone's business? If Iran wants to get its hands on nuclear weapons, Iran will have to live with the consequences, which will be inevitable and utter total annihilation. Microbes are culture. Oh, Trump banned Iron Brew. Is it because of the sugar content? I'm not too familiar with Iron Brew, so I don't know what the fuss is. I don't drink carbonated drinks, so I'm not taking you all on. You know I'm right. What's that about? Hang on, I've got to scroll up a little. Hang on. We improved it. I did. You grammar Nazi'd me when I wrote colour the other day, and I'm American, right? Yeah, Iran. Again, Dibula, you're quite right. Iran had already broken the deal, so this isn't something Trump actually did wrong. So I think this in Parliament is so disingenuous. It is so dishonest. But it doesn't surprise me because it comes from the SNP, who desperately just want to virtue signal like little shits, little fat fuck shits. Oh, it might stain the carpets. Oh, amazing! I love it. So as far as I'm concerned, if Iran got a nuke, Saudi Arabia would get nukes and destroy them. But if Iran got nukes, Israel would just unleash one of its many, many hydrogen bombs over that country and turn it into, well, more sand than it already has. Yeah. Let's continue. Let's hear what the Prime Minister has to say on this. Let's just hear what she has to say.
Prime Minister.
I have been very clear in a number of conversations with the President of the United States about the belief of the United Kingdom that the JCPOA, the nuclear deal with Iran, should stay. That is also...
I disagree entirely. In fact, I don't understand why it had to exist in the first place. If anything, that deal just existed to show how weak Obama was. It disappearing goes with his legacy. A weak one where he had zero economic growth for 8 years. Now, he can attribute that to Bush if he really wants, but it doesn't change that he had no economic growth. He blew far too much money on military action. There's so much blood on that dickhead's hands, it's unreal, and he didn't really push through any policy worth note. Although one could argue certain aspects of Obamacare, perhaps. But even then, he did shit for 8 years. And look what Trump's done. In 18 months, he's managed to do so many amazing things. He's got prisoners back early from North Korea. He's set a date to meet with the North Korean leader in Singapore, I believe. The man has done more than anyone else. And he's done, okay, he's made a few mistakes, I'll agree. But fuck me, this guy's on a roll right now.
So the view that is shared by Chancellor Merkel of Germany and President Macron of France. And that was made clear in the joint statement that I issued last night with Chancellor Merkel and with President Macron. We accept that there are other issues in relation to the behaviour of Iran that need to be dealt with. Ballistic missiles, the question of what would happen at the sunset clause at the end of the nuclear deal, and the destabilising activity of Iran in the region. Those are issues.
Do you know what would really destabilise Iran? Israel nuking them back into the Stone Age. Oh wait, what came before the Stone Age? Because I think Iran is still in that age. Whatever it was that was before the Stone Age, yeah, Israel will send you back to it. You may not like hearing that, but that's what will happen. I'm not a historian. Trump has done things out of necessity. So many have kicked cans. He had to roll up his sleeves. Very true. Disconnect.
Issues that need to be addressed, and we are working with our European and other allies to do just that.
In black.
Sand Age. Is it Sand Age? Okay. No, Laura, he went to bed and he came back on early.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister, of course, didn't make any reference to sending her Foreign Secretary to appear on Fox News.
Probably because people were too busy comparing him to Donald Trump on Twitter. And because, while a lot of people consider him a bumbling fool, he's not. He just gets very tongue-tied because he says a lot and he's very passionate about what he talks about.
As part of his foreign policy initiative, pleading with the President through Fox News rather than through direct intervention. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Middle East is in need of stability. Conflicts are already raging in Yemen, Syria and Iraq. Meanwhile, the Foreign Secretary can't deliver a foreign message abroad in the correct manner. Whilst at home, the Foreign Secretary undermines the Prime Minister on the Customs Union. Prime Minister, can you tell us when the Foreign Secretary will agree with her own government's position? And if not, will she have the backbone to send him to the back benches?
Since when is it the business of the SNP to tell the Prime Minister who should and should not be in her cabinet? First thing we have to accept here, Boris Johnson is incredibly intelligent. He may be a very controversial figure, but he is intelligent. And he was going to be the Prime Minister. There is no denying that. With Brexit, he was supposed to be the Prime Minister. There's no denying this. Okay, I don't think he will now. I think he'll be stuck where he is, or he'll go to the backbenches when Conservatives are voted out. One day that will happen, and I think he'll be done. However, with the current progress the opposition is making, it's not going to be a quick job. And Boris Johnson is very popular and very powerful. It's not a case of courage of sending him to the back benches. It's a case of making sure he understands the party's position. And him being very good at arguing means that he's a very good ally. I remember seeing this thing on a TV show called The West Wing. When it came to debating with Bartlett, he'd get the most intelligent person in the room to be his opposition. Even if that person agreed with him and his policy, he'd get the most intelligent person to argue against him. Theresa May doesn't have to find the most intelligent person to argue against her, because it happens to be, and I hate to say it, but it is Boris. And he's fantastic at arguing against a lot of her policies, which keeps her on her toes. I'm surprised she's not popping antidepressants for anxiety. Honestly. Bye-bye Socky. So yeah, it's not down to you to then question who should or should not be in the cabinet, based on somewhat rather enthusiastic behaviour of the Foreign Secretary.
Prime Minister.
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that it is absolutely right that government, in addressing the issue of the Iran nuclear deal with the United States government, worked across all levels and made representations at a variety of levels and in a variety of ways. That's what the Foreign Secretary was doing in Washington. It is what he has done with his opposite number in the past, as I have done with President Trump, as has happened with our French and German colleagues as well. We continue to believe that the Iran nuclear deal was an important step forward in helping to keep the world safe. And as I say, there are other issues that need to be worked on, and both I and the Foreign Secretary will be continuing to work on those with our European and other allies.
Well, that's it earlier. I'm not going to continue with the questions. It gets a bit exuberant and, quite frankly, boring. So, does anyone have any questions? about Prime Minister's questions. Because I'm quite happy to answer anything anyone doesn't know, or understand for that matter, before I finish, because I've got a couple minutes, and then I need to record a video for tomorrow. I've got something short, so it shouldn't take me too long to sort it out. I think I've written most of it down. And I noticed the discussion managed to move away from the death penalty and euthanasia. So yes, I guess that's fantastic news. If Laura is going to organise those debates or discussions, yes, by all means do so. Although, you'd be hard-pressed to get Sif around for one, because he's always busy. And Sophie, I'll ask you a question, by all means. But if I don't like your question, I'm just going to have Laura time you out. Yeah, Theresa May does seem full of herself. She is quite arrogant. And it isn't from a place of knowledge, understanding, or power. It is from a place of ignorance. Missile strikes in Syria. My view on it, I didn't support it because there was no evidence to support the claims. It was just eyewitness accounts at best, and one of the 3 facilities that was annihilated has been checked, and there was no traces of chemical weapons there at all. Where do whores go? They go in whammon storage 2.0, because we don't put them in with good whammon, we put them in with the bad stock, because they're used. The Labour Party were talking the same shit as they tried to... Yeah, I can imagine that being pretty shit. Okay, so I'm going to be ending this now. Thank you all very much for joining me this evening. I hope it was somewhat informative, even if... Oh, hang on a sec. Does the House of Lords contain a crying cupboard? No, but they probably want to get themselves one when when they're finally destroyed. Because quite frankly, they need to be gotten rid of. And yes, that is the best song. So I'll see you all later. Thank you very much for joining me.